Once again, dear learners at home, welcome to Home Learning. This is SGCSE English Language. In our previous lesson, we were looking at persuasive writing, which we said is the same thing as argumentative writing. So even today, we're going to continue with that. But then before we continue with the lesson for today, or rather with the main objective for this lesson, in today's lesson rather, so let's first recap on what we talked about in our previous lesson regarding arguing or structuring our argumentative writing. Remember, we said that the main purpose for anyone to argue is to be heard. It is to be convinced. It is for the other party to accept your own view. It is for the other party to accept your opinion. So whenever you set out to argue, then you will make sure that your opinion is taken or it is accepted, because you want to convince the other party who believes, by the way, in the opposite of what you believe in. All right. So that is what we said arguing was all about. And remember, we said that arguing, when you write an argumentative, what you need to have in mind is that this is a dialogue. So create it as an imaginary dialogue, and it is a dialogue between you, the writer, and the reader. All right? So it is a dialogue between the writer and the reader. So in your dialogue, the reader is going to have his or her own opinions that are an opposite of what you believe in. So you have to create that. All right? That is in your writing. So your purpose, therefore, for arguing is to convince the reader. You as a writer, you as the learner, you need to convince the reader of your beliefs, of your opinions, so that he or she accepts them. All right. So in your writing, you have to imagine what the reader thinks, how the reader is going to crush your opinions and believe otherwise instead of what you believe in. So you've got that task to make sure that you convince the reader to accept your opinions. So that is the entire purpose of arguing. All right. So in our argumentative, we talked about different structures in the previous lesson, and I introduced one structure that I believe is more effective. That is a personal opinion, though, that I believe that the structure is more effective. And if I would remind you of that structure, remember, we are talking about persuasive. So we are talking about persuasive or argumentative writing. That is when you write argumentative essays or argumentative compositions, or even that our exercise 2 there in paper 2, where we have to argue at some points. All right, so this is what we are talking about today. And then the structure that we discussed, we said that it is, as much as there are many different structures, but the one structure that we discussed, I'll take this as my page there. This is our page there. So we said that after the introduction, which we said, by the way, that the introduction has to have what? The motion. That is, what is the topic of discussion? What is the topic of argument at that particular time? So you have to introduce the argument. That is the topic. What is it that is being argued about? And then after that, you need to also introduce what? The different opinions of people. You have to show it that there are differing views regarding that motion, or rather regarding that topic of argument. All right? There are differing views, so that authenticates it as what? As an argument, as something that is worth arguing on. All right? And then again, the one other important thing is that finally in the introduction, you need to include your standpoint. That is when you need to include your standpoint, so that the reader will know from the beginning which side you are arguing for. All right? And then so that the reader will be able to formulate opposing views on that, or rather opposing arguments on what you believe in. So that is the introduction as discussed in our previous lesson. Just a reminder, we said that then the structure of the paragraphs will be like this. The first paragraph, what you're going to do, you are going to begin the first paragraph with what we termed a counter argument. So you begin the first paragraph with what is termed a counter-argument. That is the view held by the other party, that is by the opposing party in terms of these, or rather, as far as this argument is concerned. What do they claim? What do they say? What is their argument? It is their argument, it is not your argument, because you are arguing against them. So they'll have a counter-argument. So first of all, you need to acknowledge what they say. You need to acknowledge the points that they make regarding that particular topic of argument. All right, so it is always easier if you begin with this one, then you're going to present your views. All right, so remember we said that this counter argument here, you merely mention it. So you just mention it and you do not support it. So this one, you do not support it. All right, because it is not your view, but it is what they say. And it is important that you acknowledge the fact that there are people with an opposing view to what you believe in as far as that topic of argument is concerned. So you don't support this, you just mention it. And you mention it more in passing, by the way. So you begin with that. So the first sentence is going to be that counter argument, that some people believe that, then whatever topic that is given there, you say what they claim are the facts regarding that topic. And then after that, we said that possibly the second sentence of that paragraph is going to be, you're going to begin it with what we termed a concession. It's a concession phrase. Concession phrase basically being what? A contradictory phrase. That is a phrase that contradicts what is claimed by those people, to show that now you are turning against what they are saying. You believe otherwise. So you're going to begin the next sentence there with a concession phrase. And then we did make examples of concession phrases, and we are still to make more even in this lesson. And then after that, you're going to present what? It's a concession phrase, but plus what? Your argument this time around. So then this is the point where you're going to put forward your own argument. That is your own beliefs. And then having put forward your argument, you also have to support it. And then when you support it, you're going to use what we called support phrases. This is what you're going to do. You're going to use support phrases to support your standpoint, because there's no point in arguing for something, or rather in believing something, if you do not have supporting evidence, if you are not convinced yourself about it. So you need to give reasons why you believe in that. Okay, so this we said was the structure of the paragraph, and just to complete it, and then we said that at the end there, you're going to have what? You're going to emphasize after having supported, but then you then have to emphasize. So there'll be an emphasis there at the end of that paragraph, which we can call a concluding sentence in the structure of paragraphs. So we call that one a concluding sentence. All right. So just to make sure, and you reiterate that, yes, I am for this, I am in favor of this motion, or rather of this view. Okay. And you are trying to punctuate your beliefs. You are trying to punctuate your argument that it should indeed be accepted. All right. So that in that, by so doing, emphasizing, you are putting it out there without any doubt that, yes, this is what I believe in. Okay. So this, we said, is the structure of a single paragraph. I think you'd notice that in this structure, we've got both the counter argument, that is the opposing view, and that view which supports. Both views, that is against and for. Remember, we said it's an argumentative, where you strongly present your case, where you strongly argue for what you believe in, and you do acknowledge that there are others who believe differently from what you believe. All right. So for this lesson, we've been talking about such concession phrases, we've been talking about support phrases. There are other types of phrases that we need to use when we write our argumentative. So for this lesson today, we are mainly focused at enriching our argumentative. We looked at the structure. Now let's enrich our argumentative. Let's make sure that our argumentative is really convincing, and let us put in those technical terms, those that language that is needed there, that will make sure that we convince the marker, we convince the reader, we convince even whoever believes otherwise from what we believe in. So let us look at those phrases today, and then we're going to try and put them into use using sentences there where we will use to, rather which sentences we will use to support our argument then. So, all right, so now I want us to look at those supporting phrases, those phrases that needs to be there to make our writing better. Okay, so on top of those, on that list, we have got what is called, so on top of the list, we'll have opinion phrases. Remember, this is an argumentative. In an argumentative, you present your opinion. So there's a way, there are phrases that you can use to introduce your opinion or to present your opinion. So such phrases are, maybe an example would be, I believe. This is your own opinion, so the first person I is going to be used. So you say, I believe. You can say, I think. You can say, in my opinion. In my opinion, such and such should be this way. Okay, so that will be, these are examples of the way you can introduce your opinions. But in fact, there are a lot, because you can also say, in my view. That's another one. And you can also, again, say personally. And you can again use this one that says, I am very much in favor of. So you say, I'm very much in favor of. One thing that you're going to notice is that all of these, they use the first person narrative. They use the first person they. That is, here you've got I, there's I think, there's in, or rather, not in, my, which again refers to you, and also there's my view, again there, in my view, and personally, it's all about you. It is your opinion, and then you also have I am very much in favor of. So here you are presenting your opinion. If you begin, or rather if you introduce your opinions using these phrases, and of course they are not limited to this, these are just examples. So if you introduce your opinion using these phrases, it becomes clear that you are now presenting your standpoint, your personal beliefs. That is, what do you believe as far as this argument is concerned? All right, let's probably use, let's give a sentence that is going to use maybe one of those. We can, maybe let's get a topic that's, so you've got this, let's say this is our topic of discussion, this is our topic of argument. Should English language speaking be compulsory in schools in Swaziland? Should English speaking be compulsory in schools in Swaziland? All right, so those, that will be our topic of discussion, and then let's say we want to present our opinions. All right, so in presenting our opinion there, using any of the phrases that we've just discussed, we can maybe say that so that sentence would be, personally, I believe English should be spoken at all times in Swaziland schools. So you've presented your opinion there, and then you've given what we said, or rather you've used what we said were opinion phrases, because we are discussing those now. You've used personally, I believe. So this is without any doubt your personal opinion, and it is clear to the reader that this is your personal opinion. So that would be an example of a opinion phrases that have been used in a sentence. So if you introduce your opinion using any of these phrases and any others that you might think of, then you have done a good job in that. And then let's look at another form or rather another type of phrases that we need to employ when we write, rather in our writing. So beyond opinion phrases, we then have what is called addition phrases. Okay, so we've got addition phrases. For addition phrases, just like the name suggests, addition phrases are used to add information. And when you add information, you cannot add something unless there's something that you've already put forward. Unless there's something that already is there, then you are just merely adding on that, which means that you can only use addition phrases after having presented something already, and then it becomes an addition because you have already presented something on the table, and then you are just giving more details or more points on top of what you've already given. So I don't expect any learner to maybe begin with this example of an addition phrase, which is furthermore. Because furthermore suggests that you've already given something, and then further to that, and or rather to add more on that, as the name suggests, furthermore, then it is when you can use it. That is furthermore, because you've already presented something on the table. You're just adding or rather giving more information regarding that. So this is the first example of what you call addition phrases. And then beyond that one, we can also use just this one, which says in addition. Here you are giving more information. Again, you can say in addition, just to make sure that you want to make your case more stronger. And there's another one, moreover, and then these are one word. This furthermore and moreover, it's a one word. All right, it's moreover, which is one word, and do not separate the more from the over. So it's just moreover as one word there. And then also another one could be this one, besides. Besides what we've just discussed, there is something else. So besides this, there is something else that you want to add. So you can also use besides to show what your addition, to show that you are adding more information to what you've already presented. All right. So in addition, you can also say maybe to add. So to add on something that you've already stated. So you use these to give further information on what you've already stated, because we call them addition phrases. All right. So you've presented that your first point, and then now you use it maybe to begin the other, or rather maybe use it in another paragraph, or you've just given a support. You've supported, and then after having supported, and then you want to give more support, then you're going to begin that sentence with what? With addition phrases. And these are important in your writing, because once you have something to add in your argument, it means that really your argument is convincing. You are sure of what you believe in. You don't just have just one thing to lean on. All right, you've got so many things that you can put out there, and then so that the next or rather the opposing side is going to finally accept, is going to be convinced that, okay, you really know your story, whatever that you've presented, that or rather those are really the facts. Maybe I should try to reconsider my thinking to reconsider the way I view things, because you've got so much information, you've got so much to share when it comes to your standpoint, when it comes to what you believe in. So by using addition phrases, you are convincing in a way that really what I have here, I can go on and on and on arguing my point, still supporting it and giving evidence that it really is this way rather than the way you think about it. All right, so addition phrases are important. They have to be there in your argumentative writing. And then beyond addition phrases, then we've got there's another type of phrases there, which are a direct maybe contradiction to what we are talking about, that is addition phrases. So we've got what I've already mentioned or introduced, what we call concession, or it is concession rather, or I'd call it contrasting phrases for contrast, that is contrast phrases. So these are phrases that shows contrast. So that is that, concession or contrast phrases. These are meant to give an alternative or an opposite argument to what has been said already. And we said that they come after, in your paragraph, after you've introduced what they are saying, which could be the topic sentence, after the counter argument. And then after the counter argument, then you can put in that concession phrase or contrast phrase to show that, no, I do not agree with what you are saying, but rather let me present my case. Okay. So again, it is important to show, because it shows what? A change in the direction of the view, a change in the direction of the argument this time around. So it has to be there, because remember we said that in an argumentative essay, you need to acknowledge the fact that there's an opposing view to what you believe in. And to do that, you're going to use the concession phrases to present yours, because you've already acknowledged the opposing view. So contrast phrases, they include the famous contrast phrase, which is however. So however, when you say however, you are showing that I'm changing the direction of argument, the direction of view this time around. I'm saying, when you say however, you are changing the. And then more than however, you can also have another example as on the other hand. So when you say on the other hand, you are saying that, okay, fine, I can hear what you're saying. All right? I can hear what you're saying, but on the other hand, let's look at things this way. That is when you want to add or rather you want to present or introduce your own argument, that is your own beliefs. So you can use on the other hand to introduce that. And then again, you've got what? Nevertheless, which is one word too. So nevertheless, again, it is to say that, okay, fine, you're saying what you're saying, I can hear you, but then nevertheless, I still stand on what I believe in, and this is how things should be. This is what I believe should be the way to go. I do believe that English language should be spoken at all times in schools, even though I've heard you saying that, no, this is not our first language. Why don't we embrace our first language and also use it? And always use it in schools. Yes, I do understand. I hear you that you're saying that instructions come in the English language and everything, but let's embrace our own or rather native language, which is Siswati. But then you say that I've heard that. Nevertheless, I still believe that this is what we should do. Okay, so those are some of, maybe just to throw another one, you can say that on the contrary, which is another one that you can use. There you've got on the contrary to show that in contrary to what you are saying, this is another way to look at things. So those are what we call phrases for contrast or concession phrases. Maybe let's just throw them in. Let's write a brief paragraph there where we can use these phrases. Maybe we're going to start with the counter argument and then again counter that counter argument. It is a counter argument because it is not what we believe in. So maybe let's just do that right now. Okay, so this is the counter argument. This is what we said is the counter argument, where you begin your paragraph with the counter argument. Remember, here we are believing that English language should be spoken in schools at all times. The language of communication, or rather the medium of communication, should be the English language in schools. So you believe that it should be English language, and then you first acknowledge the existence of an opposing view, that there are people who are against the speaking of English language in schools at all times. So in your argument, you're going to begin with this counter argument. All right, you say some people argue that as a nation we should embrace our native language even at school to show pride in being Swazis. That is what they are saying. That is why you said it is some people, not you. It is some people because it's what you do not believe in. All right, so this is an argumentative. And then in that, then having presented this counter argument, then you're going to counter it yourself. So you're going to present an opposing view because you oppose this. Then that is when we say you will begin the next sentence with what? With a concession phrase before you present your opinion. Okay, so let's put in that concession phrase and then present our opinion, which counters, or rather which opposes this, what we've just written here. So there we go. You begin with what you said is the concession phrase to show contrast, that on the contrary, which is contrary to what they believe, contrary to what they claim, that English, I mean, we should embrace our own native language even at school to show pride in being Swazis. You'd say then, to show that you have got a differing opinion to that, you introduce that with what? With a concession phrase or with a phrase for contrast, which will be, on the contrary, I strongly believe, which again we called this what? We called these opinion phrases, where you use the first person I to show that it is you now. You strongly, and not just believe, but you strongly believe that English language should remain the preferred medium of communication in Swaziland schools. Okay, so that is that. You have used the concession phrase to show that no, I don't agree. Yes, I do hear what you are saying. I acknowledge what you are saying, but I do not believe in it. I do not accept it. Then you're going to use that concession phrase and then introduce your opinion using that opinion phrase. I strongly believe that English language should remain the preferred medium of communication in Swaziland schools. And then on top of this, then there's another type of phrase that you can then throw in this one. So that phrase would be, it's a phrase that is called support phrases. So support phrases need to also be used whenever we argue. In fact, these are the most important ones, because whenever you argue, you need to give a reason why you believe in that. There's just no point in believing in something when you do not have any valid reasons, when you cannot support why you believe in that. Why do you view things the way you do? So support phrases are very, very important. Don't just leave it here in this example just like in this example where you say that some people, they believe that English language should not be spoken at all times. We should embrace our native language. But then you say, on the contrary, I strongly believe that English language should remain the preferred medium of communication in schools, in Swaziland schools. And then you leave it there. You say that you've presented your opinion. No, this is your opinion. This opinion matters to you. So if it matters to you, you need to embrace it and support it. All right. So that you convince even the other party. And this is where, in fact, you need to convince that why should your points be accepted. So these phrases gives you the chance to convince. This is when you have to take it with both hands and say, now I need to convince you that you accept my point of view. All right, so when we talk about support phrases, we've got, so because it's a support phrase, and then you can also have this. Once you say this, is because you've mentioned the fact that you feel that Swaziland, schools in Swaziland should communicate in English at all times. And then you're going to say that this will, and you use will instead of may, because this will, it means that you are convinced about this, because you need to be convinced yourself, because you can, before rather, you can convince someone else. So this will ensure whatever then you put as a reason for speaking English at all times in schools in Swaziland. So this is a support phrase because it's a support phrase. And then also we've got which is also an example of a support phrase. And you can also have this one. So you can have these ones, which this means that as a result. So if you can listen to these carefully, you'd expect an explanation. You'd expect a reason behind that opinion that you have. So we call these support phrases. So these are called the support phrases, where you're going to give information, or rather give a reason for your opinion, why you believe in what you believe, and then in that way you will be making sure that you are convincing in your argument. You are basically, they are called support phrases because they support your point of view, and then you'll have to use them at that time. So let's now go to, maybe let's go back to our example of maybe in our paragraph there. Okay, as an addition phrase there, or rather as a support phrase, we've got, this will ensure that learners get the much needed practice for their oral examination. All right, so you've given support there, and then you've used this will to show that you are supporting the speaking of English at all times in Swaziland's schools. And on top of that, you're going to add, so now we've put in an addition phrase into action there. So we've got moreover, which means that more to what? To what I've already said, that this will ensure the learners get the much needed practice for their oral examination. There's another that I can use, there's another point that I can add on that one, which says that moreover, we live in a global village people. As a nation whose economy heavily relies on international markets, whose sole medium of communication is English, can we really afford being not proficient in their language? So this is another essential part when you want to write to convince. This is the part. Can we really afford not being proficient in their language? So this is what we call rhetoric questions. Rhetoric questions play a very vital role in convincing people, because if you throw in that rhetoric question, basically you are making the person to doubt, or to begin doubting himself or herself, or begin doubting his or her standpoint regarding the matter, because you are throwing in a question that does not necessarily mean that does not necessarily require an answer from them. But then a rhetoric question is a question that has got an obvious answer. And in this case, it is obvious because you've already put or presented the advantage or the disadvantage of not being able to communicate effectively in the English language. So you throw in that rhetoric question: can we really afford being not proficient in the English language? Then the answer is obviously no, we cannot afford. So by so doing, you've been convincing enough in your writing, in your argument. So let's look at the entire paragraph just once again so that we see what we were talking about. So we go over the passage once again. We said we begin with a counter-argument. Some people argue that as a nation, we should embrace our native language even at school to show pride in being Swazis. That's the counter-argument. That is what they are saying. And then you put in a phrase that contradicts that one. And we called them concession phrases or phrases for contrast, which is on the contrary, which then changes the direction of tone, direction of argument. You're saying, I strongly believe, which we called what? Opinion phrases. I strongly believe that English language should remain the preferred medium of communication in Swaziland's schools. This will ensure that learners get the much needed practice for their oral examination. So we said that this one is a support phrase, because whatever claim that you make, your argument needs to be supported for it to be accepted, for it to be convincing. So you say this will ensure that learners get the much needed, not just enough practice, but the much needed. So even with this one, you are convincing that it is a need. It's not a want, it is not an option, but it is a need. So it is the much needed practice for their oral examination. And then moreover, which we called an addition phrase. Moreover, we live in a global village people. As a nation whose economy heavily relies on international markets, whose sole purpose, or rather whose sole medium of communication is English, can we really afford being not proficient in the English language? So you throw in that one. And then this is a well-structured and well-supported paragraph when we argue. And then finally we said that paragraph, you end with what? With some form of emphasis, where you emphasize what you believe in. And then in this case, we've got words like, or other phrases that you can use to emphasize, phrases like, this is when we get to persuading the person, or rather convincing. So there, when you emphasize, you're going to use a phrase like this one: it seems clear to me. All right. So then this evokes a question on those who oppose your side. When you say that it seems clear to you, so if it is clear to you, then that probably start seeing it themselves. They want it to be clear even to themselves. So when you say it seems clear to me, another one that you can use, you can probably use obviously, you can use indeed. So though that is the language for persuasion, because that is what you are doing. You are putting an emphasis. So that is how you're going to conclude that that paragraph of yours. So you use that one as a concluding sentence. And then in that way, that paragraph will be very, very well structured. So now let's then look at our conclusion. We looked at the introduction, and then we looked at also the structure of a paragraph, how we should structure the paragraph in our argument. And then now let's look at how do we conclude our argumentative. Okay, so our argumentative, again, we do have phrases that we can use to conclude, or to show that this is our conclusion when it comes to our argument. So in our conclusion, it is different from the structure of the other paragraphs where we were arguing. Now we are putting the stamp on what we believe in. All right. So because right now you are punctuating your argument in that conclusion of yours. So there are different ways to show that now you are concluding, which you can call again concluding phrases. So for concluding phrases, we've got words like, or other phrases like, so these three you can use them that to sum up, to conclude, in conclusion, to show that now you've got to the end of your discussion and all that is left for you to do is to conclude that particular argument. And then when you conclude, what is the structure then of their conclusion? So let's look at that one. We're looking at the structure. So it is the structure of the conclusion. How should it look like? So when we look at the structure of the conclusion, the first thing that you're going to do is to use that. That is the first thing that you're going to do. And then that concluding phrase is going to be followed by what? So if it is followed by a suggestion, basically a suggestion would be like, you kind of introduce briefly a new point. So it's like introduction of a new point altogether, one that has not been used there. So it can never be necessarily a summary of the points that you included, but then you get the chance to just throw in one more point that you have there, which can come as a suggestion. And in making that point, you can use what is called suggestion phrases. So for suggestion phrases, so you put on a suggestion phrase there. For example, it would be a good idea if, then you are politely putting in that, because you are not necessarily giving an instruction that this is what should be done, but then you are giving what? A suggestion. And that suggestion should always be introduced by what? An opinion phrase. That is, in my opinion, it would be a good idea if, then you put in, this one should be followed by a past tense. That is a past tense of the verb in your suggestion, and then you put in that point that you are making. So it could be, maybe it would be a good idea if the Minister of Education would, or introduced or made it compulsory for English to be spoken at all times in schools. And then on top of the suggestion that you're going to make, you then have to briefly again support that one, give the advantage of that, what you are suggesting, that well, how is it going to help? Whatever that you're suggesting, how is it going to help? So that would make up the support for what you've just suggested. So you need to support even your suggestion, and don't leave it there and thinking that it is obvious, because it is never obvious with someone who is in opposition to what you believe in. Because in the first place, the fact that he doesn't believe what you believe in, it means that it doesn't see things the way that you see them. All right. So then it is important that you try to make things clear to them and to try to make things obvious to them by supporting whatever opinion that you put forward. And now let's look at some phrases that you can use to make sure that you write convincingly. All right. So let's look at the phrases that you can use in your argumentatives, that when they are there, then it will make your argumentative more convincing. Maybe just to steal from George Orwell's Animal Farm, where it said that all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. So even with words, all words are equal, but some words are more equal than others. So when it comes to persuasive writing, that is our argumentative, if we use these following phrases, then they will make sure that they give us those extra marks. They say to the marker, they say to the examiner that I am sure, I am very proficient in the language. I've been able to identify the register that I have to use for this particular exercise, which in our case is persuasive writing, because when you argue, we write to persuade. So let's look at some phrases that you can use to persuade. So these are the words that you can use. For example, you can use this one, without a doubt, which shows that you are sure of what you are talking about. And also with this one, you can use probably in one word and use this one, which is undoubtedly. So undoubtedly, then you're going to use this one. It's the same thing that without a doubt. It is convincing to the other person because you are showing that you have got no doubt with whatever that you believe in. Further, you can use this one. When you say, it seems clear to me that. So when you say it seems clear to you, then you are basically telling the other person that it also has to be clear to you too. All right? Because if it seems clear to me, it shows that I've made it clear. So you have to see it, even yourself, and then start believing in what I believe in. And again, you can also use this one and say, I maintain, to show that you are very, very much convinced of what you believe in. So these are some of the phrases that you can use, for example, when you argue your points, because they are very, very essential. Like I said, they tell the marker, they tell the examiner that you are sure of what you are saying and you've been able to identify the register that you have to use. All right, so there's quite a number of them. There's also this one that you can use unquestionably. And another one that we can use is unquestionably. So with this unquestionably, you have to make sure that whatever that you've presented is unquestionable. You have proven it beyond any reasonable doubt, and there are no questions involved. So make sure that you've done that. Don't just use these phrases just because you know them, just because you're told to use them, but make sure that even your writing is going to prove what are these phrases that you've just put in there. One simple one that you can use, it's this one, obviously. So, which again says you have to make whatever that you have presented, whatever arguments that you have to make it an obvious case. It shouldn't be questionable, which again, it's kind of the same thing. But these are some of the words that you can use to support your argument. And if you use these words, you are making sure that you are convincing, you are persuasive enough, because persuading, it's the use of these words, because you want to change the mindset, and then you're going to use words in order to change that mindset of the opposing side to the argument or to the standpoint that you have. So again, you can use this one, which is surely. So surely can be used also. And then there's also this one, as a matter of fact. So if you use this one, say it's as a matter of fact, then you are presenting your case as a fact. Because again, remember we said that in order for you to support whatever that you, whatever standpoints that you take, whatever ideas or viewpoint that you've made, then you need to support it using what? Examples, and also using statistics. So when you say as a matter of fact, then you are saying that there's a fact that I'm about to present, and then you begin that with this phrase, and then that is going to make your writing better. Okay, and again, I want us to look now at some of the phrases that you can use for our conclusion, because we've always used this in conclusion, so it has been overused. So now let's look at some of the phrases that can be used for concluding your argument. So these are concluding phrases that we are just about to look at. So in our conclusion, yes, there's that famous in conclusion, but then it has been overused. I'm not saying it is wrong, but it can be used. But however, like I said, it has been overused. So you can use this one for a change, for the reasons above, This will be the introduction to your conclusion. All right, this is the introductory phrase to your conclusion for the reasons above, and then you state your viewpoint and make sure that you reiterate whatever that you have presented. And then again, you can use this one. As you can see, so that will come at the conclusion. As you can see, you mean that you have already stated the facts, you've already presented your case, you've presented your argument, and then you've made it obvious to the point that you can boldly say, as you can see, because you have made it visible for everyone to see there. So that is how you can use maybe this phrase for your conclusion. And then there's this other one that I very much like, which you can use. It's on the whole. So when you say on the whole, in itself, it is summarizing, all right? It is something that kind of summarizes whatever that you've presented, and then you now say on the whole. In everything that I've presented, then these are the facts, and I stand firmly rooted on whatever that you present. That is whatever case that you have. All right. So, well, there's this one also that it is used in summary. But remember that when having used these phrases, they are just there to introduce that conclusion of yours. And then what has to follow then, it's the suggestion phrases that I've talked about, that I've already alluded to, and I've already made examples of those. So these words, that is the concluding phrases, these are some of the words that you can, or rather some of the phrases that you can use to conclude your argumentative paragraph. And again, I've also given you some of the phrases that you can use to make your argument more convincing, to make your argument more persuasive, using those phrases rather that we have alluded to earlier, just before these concluding phrases. Okay, so dear Form 5s, and I hope that after this lesson, you're going to write better argumentatives of a higher quality, where you're going to use the correct phrases. You have seen phrases that need to be there to show that you are persuading, to show that you are about to present your viewpoint. So make sure that you go out and employ those phrases. Make sure that you go out and do those and write better argumentative essays. All right, by just following some, maybe what we've discussed here today. Of course, you'll be directed by your teacher when it comes to the structure of the argumentative that you're going to write. As I've mentioned, that there are different structures that can be used, but then one thing that is the same, it is the manner in which you have to argue, where you present a point and then you need to support that point. Don't just leave it there and say it is obvious when it is not obvious. Make it obvious, make the other party to agree with you, because that is the art of persuasion, that is the art of argument, because you want to be heard whenever you argue. So make sure that you go out there, you write better argumentative essays. Okay, thank you very much once again for joining us for this lesson, and I hope after this lesson you're going to write better argumentative or persuasive essays there. And let us meet again next time. Have a good viewing.